How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome today. So we are going to get ahead and get started because we only got an hour, and I know the time flies by much faster than what we
Certainly
expect,
does.
right?
Yeah.
So I am Connie S. Falls. I am the owner of Entrepreneur Life Global. We are a business development firm here in Atlanta, Georgia. We create systems for creative entrepreneurs, so policies, processes, procedures. It's my 13th year in business, and I only work with women, minorities, and veterans, which basically means the people that look like me.
Right.
So I created Business and BS podcast live so that way I can have conversations with dope entrepreneurs, people that are in my network, my sphere of influence, that I think are super dope and have great stories to tell that you guys can take notes from, because everybody doesn't always have access to these types of conversations that my friends and people that I know are privy to, and I'm blessed to be able to share that with you. So Business and BS, the BS can sometimes stand for business strategies, and sometimes it just stands for the regular BS that come along with running the business.
Right.
And I have my amazing guest, Mr. Chris Classic, in the building today. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm excellent. How about you?
Doing delightful, getting some calm time after this, week of unrestfulness, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, if you would, please introduce yourself.
My name is Chris Classic. I am a songwriter, artist, and entrepreneur from New York originally, and been here in the beautiful city of Atlanta going on 4 years.
Awesome. So let's start because most stories begin with when I was young. So let's talk about what it looked like growing up for you.
Well, I was raised in Hempstead, Long Island, which is about 20 minutes outside of New York City. And I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. So I grew up kind of identifying as someone who was different from everyone else in morality and character. And I wasn't really allowed to participate in a lot of the celebratory things that we associate with childhood. But it did help create a commitment to my community based on the notion of wanting to improve people's lives. And so I always feel like even today, far removed from my childhood, I try to live my life in a way that becomes some sort of testament to my creator and the blessings that I have.
Awesome. So feeling like you were raised differently, do you feel like that had an impact on who you are today?
Absolutely. It's easy for me to not participate in certain things just because, when you aren't really allowed to celebrate like your birthday, for example, or, things that provide some sort of self-celebration. Sometimes it kind of it allows you to disconnect from people, from ideology. So I think today it allows me to not participate in certain things that might have been to my detriment as, a young adult, right? So because I grew up kind of not associating with certain people, I never gravitated towards some of the lower natured things that a lot of my friends did. I was used to having to say no. And so it allowed a little bit of self-discipline in some aspects, and then in other aspects I went ham because I was forbidden, right? So as an adult, being raised a certain way definitely impacts your behavior, your mindset, and it can, on a positive note, make you very empathetic to people who are different from you.
Got it. So you said a word that I think is super imperative, and we just talked about it on my last podcast, is the word discipline. Do you feel like the way you were raised, that's where the discipline came from? Or do you think discipline is something that can be learned?
Discipline is definitely something that can be learned. When you think about people who manage to have huge personal transformations, whether it's in their character, whether it's in their weight, right? There are people who, their physical shape, they do these amazing transformations. That comes from a discipline place that many people have had to learn, especially if there is a genetic history of obesity, of not eating correctly, right? So a lot of discipline today is learned. I think in my particular case, it gave me discipline in some ways, and then it made me rebellious in others. You know, not really growing up with the aspiration to become wealthy, I think was a detriment to me because
Mm.
it allowed me to perhaps not really focus on pursuing knowledge of business and business management and financial management because I didn't grow up relying on the goal of making money, if that makes any sense. You know, it was about separation from the worldly society, you know, that we're living in, you know. So that's something that I had to learn. I always liked nice things, but I also, in the back of my mind, kind of thought that they were associated uh, with badness, you know. So I
Mm.
had to learn that I'm allowed to have nice things. I'm allowed to aspire to wealth. I'm allowed to work hard and sacrifice in order to pursue that. And there's no fault in enjoying it once you've attained it.
You know, it's crazy that you said that because I felt like that the same. Like I thought wanting to be rich was like, oh, I'm being greedy. Like I don't really
Mhm.
need that much. For me, I've grown up with the mindset of, if I have a tent on the side of a lake and I could fish
Right,
and, lay out in the sun all day. I'm also from California, so that's the
right.
hippie part of me, right?
Mhm.
But so I never thought about the I want to be rich, I want to be wealthy because that was considered bad and being greedy, right? But
Yeah,
that's also detrimental because it wasn't until I got older I was like, yo, you know how many more people I could impact if I had more money?
right.
Was there a moment in your life where you were like, yeah, no, I'm kind of doing this a little
Um,
bit wrong?
it was about when I turned 21 or 22, I realized that I ended up in certain circles based on relationships that were either by, you know, my immediate family or by people that I just gravitated to or gravitated to me, where I always ended up around wealth. I always ended up having friends who were these wealthy people. And I think, um, they say that, you know, money is called currency, right? So it's an energy, it's a spirit, right? And sometimes when people become super wealthy, they begin to focus on the content of their character, right? I've already proven how much money I make. The only thing you can judge me now, you know, is by what I do with it and who I am, right? So that's when you see a lot of people who are wealthy, you know, they preach it's not about money. Meanwhile, everyone else is like, what do you mean? It's, you know, what I'm trying to get. Um,
Right.
so I think at an early age, people who had acquired wealth were able to feel that my energy wasn't there to be a leech. I didn't care about, there was no angle in our interaction. You know, there weren't transactional relationships based on what somebody could do for me. And so it allowed them to just share, here, take my car, come to the house, stay, go, you know what I'm saying? So I think when I got to about 21, 22, and I realized all of these connections and relationships that um, were authentic, I was like, well, then I guess I'm supposed to have this too, if it keeps showing up in my life. And so that kind of changed my mindset. What I had to start learning, and I'm still learning now, is how to, you know, be in control of my finances and how to create a business acumen that can become part of my legacy with my brand.
So, though that education, there's some of us that very few of us that were raised with entrepreneur parents that taught us all the ropes, and we had a trust fund, and
Mhm.
here's all the processes and the system and a franchise business that we already have, right? But most of us didn't come from that. So, where did your desire to become an entrepreneur come from?
Um, I think I didn't like the notion um, of relying on other people's policies as a guideline for my creativity, if that makes any sense. So I used to work for a jingle house in New York, and the advertising agency for Burger King at the time, on a creative call, and we're playing back this hip hop advertisement jingle that I'm writing for Burger King. And I'm from New York, so it started off, yeah, with that same vocal intonation and almost accent. And it was this probably 60 or 70-year-old white man who was trying to coach me on how to say the word yo. And it was at that point that beyond creative direction, because I understand creative direction, but it was beyond creative direction. It was a slap in the face. And I realized that in order for me to be in control of what I create and what the world hears, I have to be able to work for myself. Or I at least have to have allies that can allow me to create how I feel, and be allowed to have the outlet of the creativity with the same impact monetarily, because sometimes people will pay you less based on your culture, um, especially when it comes to agencies, but will pay a white agency more, or double, um,
Wow.
or not even do business with a music vendor or a video vendor. So I think it was at that moment that I realized that I had to work for myself, musically. As far as my brand, Savoir Faire, that just came about from me wanting to create a fragrance for myself. And as I was, testing it on people at the gathering spot, for about, I want to say 8 months is when I was really like, adamantly going down the bar. Do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this? Once it got to a point that everybody at the bar wanted to buy it for themselves, I kind of thought I'd be a fool not to sell it. So I created a brand, started off as a website, created an LLC, and 5,000 or so bottles later, um, we're here. And I work from home. I ship all over the country, um, and the business is growing even in this particular climate. I pivoted a little bit and gone from creating a fragrance that you wear to a personal space room spray that you spray in your environment to change your mood. Um, that's been wildly successful. Realizing that as African Americans, we spend $125 million per year, on fragrances, not just hair, not grooming products, not deodorant, not toothpaste, not lotion. That's different. That's another 100, 200, 300, $400 million,
Wow.
each of those categories. We spend specifically $125 million a year just on fragrance. And when you think about a black owned fragrance brand, you can't think of one, right? Like, you may know of me and a couple of others, especially here in Atlanta and Houston, but it's not a household name.
Yeah.
So there's room, which is why I'm so happy that there are so many other people now who are like, I like fragrances. I want to make one too. And they're incorporating, and they're, happy about having great packaging. They're caring about customer service. There's room. There's room. So I'm just, happy to be in this space where I'm able to kind of be the guinea pig, for a lot of people who always wanted to, but never really pulled the trigger. And I'm hoping that I can continue to grow and that we can all continue to grow.
So fragrance is an interesting space because
Mhm.
it's not something that out of nowhere. Like people are like, oh, I want to be a coach, a trainer, whatever it is you fill in the blank to. That's a standard business that people create. How did you get into fragrance?
Well, I loved fragrances as a teenager, and my dad, when I would visit him, always had a drawer. His dresser was full of colognes. Still is. And I kind of felt that as a man, I just saw him having a bunch of different colognes. I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Um, my stepfather also wore cologne, not so much, but he did have a couple that he would wear. So I kind of felt like it was what you're supposed to do. Um, it was an added step. Um, and then when I became a teenager, I had the opportunity to really get to know DMC from Run DMC, the entire group. But DMC used to wear Creed Imperial Molesame. He probably still does. And it didn't matter where we were. It didn't matter if he came off the stage sweaty. D always smelled amazing. And I think I had to be around 17 or 18. And I was like, D, what are you wearing? And he was like, knowing how expensive it was, and I'm just a teenager, he was like, not telling you, Finally, he told me what it was. Um, and someone else told me as well about Creed Imperial Molesame, and that became my first luxury fragrance that I loved. And from there, it was just about me finding these niche, super high-end luxury fragrances that I kind of fell in love with, and that became my palette. And so I'm modeling my fragrance brand after the luxury high-end ones that I admire. And I'm grateful when consumers and customers and friends are able to, kind of share that they feel my fragrances are mentionable in the same sentence as some of these high-end brands. And so I'm just hoping to improve.
So you've done a lot over your journey.
Hmm.
So it's not just the fragrance, but you also are in the music industry.
Hmm.
That is a space where, especially us living in Atlanta, everybody says they're in the music industry. Remember back in the day, everybody's like, "Oh, I'm a producer," I'm
Yeah.
a like, come on, man, stop it.
Mhm.
But you've really been ingrained into this industry. Tell me about what that journey has looked like for you.
Well, to be quite honest, it's really the movie industry in the in the music department of the film industry.
Got
Um,
it.
for the last 15 or so years, since 2004, um, I've been creating music specifically for film and TV. I have a mentor in that space. His name is Ali Theodore, and he was one of the few, handful of white Jewish hip hop producers um, in the 80s and 90s that was respected. And I met him in 1999. He introduced me to so many different music industry folks that we started writing together. After Jam Master Jay was killed, who was my mentor, who was, kind of ushering into the actual music industry, when he was killed, Ali said, well, we work together well. Why don't we try to take some of these songs that, we can create and write together and sell them to Hollywood? So in 2004, we started. For me, I'm specifically creating hip hop. He's creating pop. He's creating dance tracks. He's doing it all. So myself, I have about 250 to maybe 300 now syncs or licenses that are either active or have been active. He has thousands, and it's become quite an annuity when residuals show up in low and high times, and it's been really helpful. So it's completely behind the scenes. If you ever watch a movie, you know how important music and sound is in a movie, but then when you watch the movie credits, music is at the very end. So it's a very kind of thankless job sometimes. And I think now so many people who have tried to get into the music business, who may have seen some success, are now saying, well, they're using their name and clout to go that route of, you know, doing music for film and TV. So it's growing. Here in Atlanta, there doesn't seem to be an organized group of producers who are specifically um, making music for film and TV. Because a lot of the decisions, a lot of the music supervisors who are in charge of what goes into a TV show or in a movie, they're still in LA.
On Hollywood.
So there are certain things that are happening here in Atlanta, especially like in the case of Mr. Perry's studio, where everything can kind of be contained in one location. That's the goal. So my goal would be to become affiliated with him so that a kind of consortium of creators for film and TV specifically can start there.
What's some advice that you'd like to give to creatives that are just in indie? I mean, because it sounds like most of where you are is in a creative space.
Mm-hmm.
What's some advice that you give to creators right now in this climate that we're in? Because with Corona, I know that wiped out a lot of of, of the creative space where people felt like, you know, I can't go outside, I can't create, I can't show my products. Tell me what kind of advice would you give to those people that are in creative space now?
Well, this is the perfect time for creativity. It may not be the perfect time for introduction of a product. It may not be the perfect time for you to launch your brand per se, but it's the perfect time for you to create. Think about life itself, right? Life is created in the womb. The womb is in private, it's in darkness. Right now, we're isolated, we're kind of in dark times. This is the best time ever that you probably experienced in your adult life where you could just kind of create. Perhaps creating without the inside influence of talking to a hater at work about your ideas, talking to someone randomly and maybe not getting the best advice. When we're kind of forced to isolate and operate in a silo, might be the best time for you to kind of work out all of the kinks, to get your ideas down, to create that website, to buy that domain, to do that extra step. I always say that there are a lot of us who have these brilliant ideas that are in our closets. We went to that one time where your homegirl had a vision board party, and you made this really cool vision board about this brand that you wanted to have, life that you wanted to. hmm But we do that, and it goes from our bedroom floor or taped near the door or someplace prominent because we knew that we were supposed to keep it in front of us. And then life happened, and we kind of, I don't know if I could do this. Maybe I'll do it next year. I'll do it over Christmas break. And it goes in the closet, or we write ideas down and we don't execute. So I think that this creates the perfect time for you to take that thing out of your closet, to open up your laptop and open up those files of those clothing designs that you have, that shoe design that you had, to work on that business plan that you had. Like, when will you get the collective spare time? Now, listen, I know that there are a lot of parents who this really ain't no break, right? Because your children are home demanding your attention. Your spouse may be home working from home, and they may need your attention. So I'm aware that this isn't a complete break for everybody. But collectively, at least in this country, you kind of being by yourself and hunkering down is not frowned upon right now. So use that time wisely. Use that time to get your dream out, at least in a better place where it was 6 months ago, and take another step. I think that's the best advice that I could personally um, give creators. There are people who are more of the logistics and executors, right? And those are the people who take people's great ideas and creativities and amplify them to the rest of the world. And quite honestly, as we kind of transition to the open up, this is when we're going to need you the most. Because it's like, all right, let me take what you did and show you how to make it count, and help you enter it into the new normal that we're going to deal with. So it will take foresight, and homework and research, on your end. But yeah, as far as the creators, the people who have 10 million ideas, this isn't the time to binge watch Netflix, or to you know what I'm saying. Like, it's really not the time. um it's a tough world that we're living in, that we've been living in. um and you got to go within and find whatever light and magic that you have left, and you gotta use it for you, and use it for your family, um, and unapologetically, and intentionally.
Thank you. For those of you guys that have questions or things that you want us to reply to, there's a button at the bottom that has a question mark in there, because the comments tend to go a little quick. If you have any questions, make sure that you put them into the comment below. A couple of the things you talked about, I want to make sure that we expand on. One of those is having a mentor.
Mhm.
I don't think many of us that look like us growing up understood the importance of having a mentor, somebody that they could talk to. And I think there's a fine line between, hey, let me slide in your DM and pick your brain, and I'm really looking to you for pure mentorship. Tell me about the importance that
Mhm.
mentors have played in your journey.
Um, Mentors have been my complete key to success, because my mentors have either directly impacted my my mindset, or their mistakes became warning signals that I did not have to follow. Um, you know, some people have criticized me for sharing so much of my personal life and being transparent. Um, but I didn't really have anybody to watch growing up that mirrored me. I had some older mentors that were at least 10 to 15 to 20 years older than me, but nobody really aiming for where I was headed that was around my age. So I think in this digital era, we have so many amazing entrepreneurs, fathers, husbands, creators, athletes that are real life, um, kind of guidelines, and manuals, if you will, digital manual.
He dropped us.
You can, sorry,
Okay.
uh, of how you can live, um, on a daily basis without, like, being a fraud, without this everything is superposed and perfect, like it's real life. So for me, mentors were everything, and I do my best to, um, as a father of three children, right, who all live with me, try to divide my time between, actually mentoring my children, which is the most important to me, but then being able to transparently share for the digital mentees, that I have, most of whom I don't know, because they tell me years later, I've been following you for years, and there's something that compels them to finally reach out one day. um, but being a mentor when you can, is extremely important. It fosters accountability, right? You know, if everybody knows who you are and what you're about, it's going to be really difficult to do something other than that. That
Mhm.
is against what your word has been. So for me, it's definitely about accountability too, because it helps keep me focused.
So accountability, I think that is a word that it goes along with discipline that a lot of us really haven't dug deep into. How important is accountability when it comes to, you know, the people that are around you? And I'll give it to you framed like this. My friends, we have what's called our friendship portfolio. It's one of the things that we came up with. And in our friendship portfolio, we know that we're able to call. If I have a question about beauty, I could call, you know, Joy. If I have a question about tech, I could call Tanya. If I have a question about branding and marketing, I could call Madi. Like if I want to know what content about content creation, I could hit this is Nikki's up. Like if I want speaking, I could hit up Life or Jeremy. Like I have people that are in my friendship portfolio that I can make a call to, but I know everybody doesn't have access like that, which is part of why I created this live series is to open the door so people could have an opportunity for this.
Hmm.
How important is your friendship portfolio in your life? Because mentors is one space, but also just the people that are around you. How important is your portfolio to you?
It's what I live by. You know, we are multi-layered people, right? So there's a layer of me as Chris that is right here in this house, and if I have to be a doting dad or a supportive mate, that's one layer. And when I need to just kind of just vent, you know, there's that layer that I live. And then there's the layer of being a friend who has to talk to, you know, my homeboys who are going through their own personal crises or happinesses, right? And I have to be able to be there for them. And then there's the other layer of the outside world, the people who I'm trying to meet and transact with. So I think, you know, having a portfolio of friends that you consult with and that hold you accountable is extremely important. I would safeguard against making it transactional, especially for entrepreneurs, in the sense of, you know, I jokingly, you know, kind of joke with my Jewish friends about them always saying, I got a guy, right? And it's just like, I got a guy who does that. And it's about this, you know, ability to always have somebody to do this thing that you need, but there isn't really a personal relationship with them. It's transactional. So I think we have to understand the difference between those. Having an extensive business Rolodex is really important, but then also having an emotional Rolodex of people that you might feel safe to vent to, people that you know that you can make them feel safe for them to vent to you, and then for people to be able to bounce ideas off of without the worry of them biting off of you, um, and then people who know how to give constructive criticism is extremely important. You know, if you're showing me your portfolio ideas and I'm like, that's whack, that was whack, you're either going to take that harshly, or you're going to know me good enough to know that I don't want you to be whack. And so I'm being as honest as possible, you know, so that you know I love everything else, not that one. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, you have to be able to find your niche people, emotionally and professionally, that you're able to kind of have at an arm's reach, because you need them, and hopefully your character will allow them to need you too.
I think what you said about creative, constructive criticism is super imperative. And it takes a level of humility and pride that I don't think that many of us grew up with.
Hmm.
Most of us, like, if you talking about you trying to clown me, trying to roast me, like, nah, my stuff is fire. Like, my mixtape is popping. Like, bruh, all these songs are not.
Right.
I love you.
Right.
But number 8 through 12 is not
Yeah.
hitting. 1 through 7 is popping out here on these streets. So
Right.
sometimes we also have to evaluate our own pride and humility to be able to receive constructive criticism. Otherwise, it's going to come off as hating. So let me ask you one more question while we're talking about hating. What do you think about the whole haters movement? Because it's calmed down a lot in my circle of people, like my Facebook group and folks like that, not Instagram, but the big haters are my motivators. And I was like, y'all letting people that don't like you motivate you? What are your thoughts on hating and hating being your motivation?
It serves its merit. Um, in micro doses. Um, you know, there are people. Just think about athletes, for example. When you and I don't know how familiar you are with basketball, but I'm just gonna, for the sake of this, assume that you are. When you think about the college basketball player in the Final Four standing at the foul line, and he's not at home, he's hearing boos, and they're loud, and they're kids. They're not adults that are kind of reserving their energy. They're angry. I hate you. It's in that moment that you develop a certain character. You either are overwhelmed and thrown off, or you can silence them, and you can kind of use that negative energy to propel you to go forward. It's the same thing. When people, I think culturally, especially here in America, we've always been told no, that we're not allowed. And I think that that becomes our fascination with proving naysayers wrong.
Mm.
You know, I think the understanding that there will be people who don't like you and don't like what you're about, um, or are overly critical, I think that's important too, just to understand that that's, coming with the territory. So the idea of haters gonna hate, right, is, I think that's a healthy one to have. My uncle always tells me they're just doing their job. Like, everyone has a job, so they're just doing their job. And I think that saying alone allows me to understand that with the territory, it's going to come someone who has the job of being negative towards your intention. You know, Conversely, you have the universe that's conspiring in your favor. So, they're doing their job.
Got it. All right. So we've talked about the mentors, the friends. Let's talk about when it comes into the family. Part of why this week was important to me was because just everything you turn on today, it's black men being killed, it's from riots, it's marching, it's such an emotional time, right? Where I wanted to make sure that I highlighted really dope men that are not just black men, but are also black husbands and are also black fathers.
Thank you.
All of those things are super important to me for us to be able to see the greatness that you guys put out there. Tell me how important your relationship with your wife and marriage has been as a black man, just in general, but also towards your business.
I think in general, I will say that in this particular climate that we're in and during these particular times, it forces a mirror to your relationship. And I think that, speaking personally, it forced one for mine, um, in a way that when you look at a mirror, it's going to show you your imperfections, right? And it allows you, if you're taking the grooming model, it allows you to get in there and really identify what it is. What is that, right? And you can clean it, you can take care of it, you can address it. But it required you seeing it and seeing yourself. And I think this particular time of being confined to home, whatever that home looks like, right? So celebrities can hide in their wings, right? And then some people are in a studio apartment. Um, it forces you to look at each other. It forces you to look at how you're relating, and to make adjustments. So I think for me, having somebody that I can vent to, who I can scream obscenities at about the world, right? And them being able to either agree or just be silent and listen, to allow you that space to vent, is really, really helpful. Somebody to, it's very cliche, but the meth and Mary joint of rub me on my back and tell me it'll be okay, right? It's someone who does not always have a solution, but allows you to express your problems, is extremely helpful. Um, Seeing someone who's also sacrificing their personal time and space like you, is helpful too. My wife commutes back and forth to work, and her time of being on, 20 or 75 to work is her time that she gets to listen to Ratchet Lil Wayne loud as hell. That's her time and her space to be by herself, to do whatever she wants to do, to think however she wants to think, to talk to her friends, her cousins, whomever. That's her space. That's her time. And then she comes back to the house, and she's somebody, three people's mama. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's tough to do that day in and day out, but it helps you appreciate the space that you have to yourself, even though it's limited. Being able to be here allowed me to appreciate the fact that she doesn't really have that space to be by herself
Mm.
since we've been home. You know what I'm saying? When, I do the events that I curate here, I get to, it seems like I'm partying, it seems like I'm out having fun, and I do enjoy myself, but there's a goal at the end of that. But when you're not there, I'm sure it seems like you just party for a living. You know what I'm saying? So that hasn't happened for months either. So I think being able to understand and respect each other's personal space, I think coming out of this, it will allow us to make sure that we carve out time to allow our mates to have their personal space, and to, you know, relinquish their responsibility of parent, and that has to be so hands on for a little bit. It's healthy, and I think that's the best way that I can describe how this time that we're in, and being a husband has improved me.
That's gonna free somebody, I promise you, because we don't get to have a lot of these conversations, and we don't, because being, especially being a vulnerable Black man, and everybody that I've had on the show this week, from everybody, has been very transparent about, here's where I've been strong, here's where I've been weak, here's where I've fallen short, here's where this is my thing, right? But genuinely being able to be transparent as a Black man is something that I know hasn't been something you were ingrained with. You're not taught that it's okay to cry, to talk about your emotions, to say, like Jason did the other day. He was like, "Yeah, no, my wife, no, she runs this part of it. Now I
Mm-hmm.
may be good at this, but I'm not good at that." And I think that these type of conversations are so necessary, because we need to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Black women need to see it. Black men need to know that it's okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I applaud you for even sharing the conversation that you're having. So tell me about, we'll talk about this climate just for a minute, because I think it's just necessary. As a Black father with children, how do you talk to them? Or have you decided, because I know some of them are young, how do you talk to them about what's going on in the world right now?
I listen first, because then that dictates what I need to talk about. Um, because overwhelming children with uh, negative energy that is real. I'm not saying to shield them from truth, but it's kind of like there's an age limit for alcohol, right? There's an age limit for any sort of vice that you can probably think of. And right now, the news is a vice. And I have to listen to hear what they know before I have certain conversations so that I don't expose them to a fear-based view of their future.
Mm.
Um, you know, one of my good friends, his son was graduating high school, and you know, my oldest is in 10th grade, and we just finished 10th grade, and you know, I felt so bad that he didn't get to graduate, you know, with the whole circumstance, you know, pomp and circumstance of an actual ceremony, you know.
Right.
And so we sat, and my son sat right next to me, and we watched on Zoom him declare what college he was attending and how he had 9 or 10 options that he narrowed down from having so many, and he was, you know, at the top of his class. And you know, it was a great experience in that moment. But I realized that my friend's son didn't get to go to the soccer championship that he was, you know,
Mm.
captain of the team. He didn't get to get his flowers as a graduate, you know. And I realized that being in school and then not being in school and being home is a traumatic experience. With, you know, looking at what's going on in the world is traumatizing for a kid, especially in communities where you may have peers who have no outlook for the future, where high school is their thing. High school is their time where their reputation is made because their uncles and older cousins and men in their family, that's all they talk about. Because maybe because they didn't go to school, or maybe because they're still right there in the spot where they grew up at, you know. So it's an amazingly difficult time for teenagers right now. And after, you know, the 16-year-old, we have a 12-year-old, and he has several different environments that he's a part of, you know, going to a private school, and you know, children who are extremely intelligent and have goals and have already thought about where they want to go to college, right? So it's just like, you know, he wants to go to the protest. He wants to, I just want to see. My oldest has been with me in New York several times, you know, for Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin. Um, but I think even me, I've changed. I don't want to go to a protest anymore. There's not. I don't want to go to a march anymore. I want a more definitive retaliatory action. I can't tell them that. I like that can't be my messaging to them. You know. So again, it's listening first, and then deciphering what I can tell them, and what I can share with them that would allow them to hear it from other sources, not just seeming like I'm narrating uh, from my own personal belief.
Got it. All right. We got some questions, so I'm gonna go ahead and get to those. All right. What would you say to a single parent with children who have special needs in making time for self and business?
Um, that's a really interesting and tough situation. And so I applaud you for making the time to do what you have to do. And, you know, being a creator, it seems selfish in the process of creation. Um, and I would encourage you to do the most that you can do to get that idea to completion. Um, the execution part, you're going to need a village, but the creation part, I think you'll receive more fulfillment if you actually take the time um, to do the best you can on your own. You're taking care of a child with special needs, and you're a single parent. The worst thing that you can do, future wise, is feel guilty about spending time creating something that's going to provide for your child and to provide emotional contentment and fulfillment as an individual and as a human being. So I would strategize by if your business plan is a very viable one and it stands to be potentially very successful, I would perhaps work on finding teammates that can help you when it comes to your business execution, so that you can retain ownership of the IP, the intellectual property of the said business. But find people that can help you execute your vision, and then hopefully you'll be able to monetarily create help for the care on the day-to-day level of your child. It seems overwhelming, but I would never want you to resent your child for preventing you from getting your dream out. So you have to take the time to do what's necessary for you as a creator, and hopefully it can start to generate revenue that would allow you to receive or to hire help, and then have those teammates that you may be able to break off certain percentages of your business in exchange for overwhelming help and support on the execution side. That's my advice from the gut. And if I can think of anything else, if that person would be kind enough to send me a direct message, if there's anything else after I think about it for more than a few minutes, I'll be happy to share.
That's dope. And I agree with everything that you said, Chris, because you have to be able to put your time, like as entrepreneurs, everybody loves the title because entrepreneurship is sexy right now. Everybody's entrepreneur, business. Yeah, okay. When you get to the space where you can take your hands off and your hands are free, that's the real level of entrepreneurship and CEO-ness that we're trying to get to. If every day you're working on your business and you're toiling with your hands, there are some tasks that you should be delegating. If it's something that can be duplicated, it can be documented, and it can be delegated. Duplicate, document, delegate. That's why we create systems. That's why I'm always pushing the word systems, because if we're like, I will not take away any more time from my daughter than I need to when I can delegate or pay somebody else to do it. And I have a whole systems in a day workshop class that we do every single Tuesday. The link is in my bio for it. But I really push the fact that our hands are supposed to be free. I will never again have my daughter ask me, do I love my business more than I love her because I hold my laptop more than I hold her. I will never let that happen again. She asked me that. She said that to me when she was 5. And I made a decision on that day that I would never, ever, ever make her feel that way. And the only way that you can do that is by putting systems in place and delegating those tasks that you don't have to do with your own hands.
Yeah.
There's some, no matter what industry you're in, there's some stuff that you don't have to do. Now there's pieces when you're on the front end and you're grinding and you know what I mean? I'm going to pour the bottles and I'm going to do everything. But if Chris really wanted to delegate that out, he could delegate that part out.
Right.
But part of this is his grind. It's something that he enjoys doing. This is his time that he's investing into his business. And it may be easier and more financially responsible to do it at home. But at some point, once he gets to, he's at 5,000. Once we hit 50,000, he's not going to be able to do this by himself. Right. He'll have to start investing and putting more systems and more teamwork and employees behind it. But make sure that you're spending your time doing what's going to create the most impact and the most income for your business. So I agree 100%. We have another question that came in. Let's see. My wife has a misconception that since I pay the bills, I'm trying to take control. In actuality, I feel as a Black man, it is my responsibility to take care of my wife and children. What do you think about that?
Every family is going to have a different dynamic. At the end of the day, it is your responsibility to be there for your family as the head of the household, right? If you etymologize the word husband, right? It's literally house band. It's the one who keeps it together. And your goal to financially take care of your family is one thing. You're forbidding her to work will appear like a suppression of independence and individuality. So the thing you need to focus on is always being there as a net for your wife and for your children. If you think about a net, it does allow some movement, right? But ultimately, you know that it's surrounding you for support. So I think that, you know, if and only this man can answer this, you know, internally, he has to identify what his true intentions are, by not wanting his wife to work. If it's about, you don't want her to have to deal with the stress of different personalities during the day, um, that's honorable. Maybe you can encourage her to be an entrepreneur who has a business that she can run from home, and help her work on the logistics of it so that she is employed for herself. She can employ your children depending on how old they are. And she can also generate her own income. So that way her purchases and spends are not dictated by what you allow. Um, if, however, you would like to be the one who pays for everything for the sake of dictating what gets purchased, that's something personal that you're gonna have to work through. But being there as a support and a net and a band, the belt for the house, um, there's nothing wrong with that, and it is our responsibility to protect our family, but also to grow our family. And if your wife doesn't feel that she can grow as a human being, it is going to create a situation that you won't be able to fix, because the problem won't be in your hands, the problem will be inside of her. So you have to make sure that you allow her to grow as an individual, which will make her a better individual for your children, and a better mate with a freer heart to deal with you.
Come on and drop them bars on them, Chris. Okay, then we hear you out here with therapy. So there's a couple more questions. I know you guys, we're coming up to the end. I told you the hour is going to go fast. If you have those questions, I know there was somebody that was asking if we would try different products. If you'll shoot us both individual DMs so we can talk about what those products are in mentorship, please send those out. But I want to make sure that I have time for Chris to be able to tell us what you have going on, how can we support you, what kind of specials. So I know Father's Day coming up and Savoir Faire needs some sales. So tell me what you have going on.
Well, right now, to be quite honest, I'm working on creating more discovery boxes. Discovery boxes are, are these here. This is not a complete one, but just so you get an idea of what it looks like. This is a 10 milliliter of, I have 3 fragrances. So this box holds 10 milliliters of all 3 fragrances. This is $55. It allows people to try all 3 to figure out which one they may like the best. And then I have a larger size, 50 milliliter, that people can purchase. I'm thinking about dropping an exclusive Father's Day t-shirt that I just pressed up last night with my brother Carlton, and this is what it says.
Those old Rolling Stones, stop. Get with it.
So
yeah.
And then this is what the back says.
Championing the new Black Dad. I love it. Please drop it so we can purchase it.
Yeah, so I'm considering releasing just a really small limit, like 50 of those, just for the sake of having a strong 50 partners that I can continue to grow with on a micro level. But yeah, I mean, I should be restocked probably by next week, as far as all of my fragrances go. As far as the mood mist goes, which I don't have any in arm's reach, but the mood mist, like I said, is based off my most popular fragrance, Soul Cafe, and it's a personal space room spray, and it's quite mood changing, I will say.
Wait, before, because it's going to cut off, I want to say thank you for coming on, and
Yep.
we love all of our followers. Make sure you're following Chris all over.